Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, depending on where you are in this world. God bless you. This is Gloria White coming to you from Utah, USA. Today we are continuing in the second book of Kings in the New Jerusalem Holy Bible, and we are in chapter 13. The reign of Jehoahaz in Israel, 814 to 798. In the 23rd year of Joash, son of Ahaziah, king of Judah, Jehoahaz, son of Jehu, became king of Israel in Samaria. He reigned for 17 years. He did what is displeasing to Yahweh, and copied the sin into which Jeroboam, son of Nebat, had led Israel. He did not give it up. This aroused Yahweh's anger against the Israelites, and he delivered them without respite into the power of Hazael, king of Aram, and Benadad, son of Hazael. Jehoahaz, however, tried to placate Yahweh, and Yahweh heard him, for he had seen the oppression which the king of Aram was inflicting on Israel. Yahweh gave Israel a savior who freed them from the grip of Aram, and the Israelites lived in their tents as in the past. But they did not give up the sin into which Jeroboam had led Israel. They persisted in it, and even the sacred pole stayed standing in Samaria. Of Jehoahaz's army, Yahweh left only 50 horsemen, 10 chariots, and 10,000 foot soldiers. The king of Aram had destroyed them, making them like dust trampled underfoot. The rest of the history of Jehoahaz, his entire career, his prowess, is this not recorded in the book of the annals of the kings of Israel? Then Jehoahaz fell asleep with his ancestors and was buried in Samaria. His son Joash succeeded him. The reign of Jehoash in Israel, 798 to 783. In the 37th year of Joash, king of Judah, Joash, son of Jehoahaz, became king of Israel in Samaria. He reigned for 16 years. He did what is displeasing to Yahweh. He did not give up the sin into which Jeroboam, son of Nebat, had led Israel. He persisted in it. The rest of the history of Joash, his entire career, his prowess, how he waged war on Amaziah, king of Judah, is this not recorded in the book of the annals of the kings of Israel? Then Joash fell asleep with his ancestors, and Jeroboam ascended his throne. Joash was buried in Samaria with the kings of Israel. The death of Elisha. When Elijah had fallen ill of the illness of which he was to die, Joash, king of Israel, went down to him, and shedding tears over him, said, "Father, Father, chariot of Israel and its chargers." Elisha said to him, "Bring bow and arrows." And he sent for a bow and arrows. Then Elisha said to the king, "Draw the bow," and he drew it. Elijah put his hands over the hands of the king, then said, "Open the window towards the east," and he opened it. Then Elisha said, "Shoot," and he shot. Elisha said, "Arrow of victory over Aram. You will defeat Aram at Aphek completely." So he's going to wipe out Aphek. Elisha said, "Take the arrows," and he took them. Then he said to the king, "Strike the ground," and he struck it 3 times, then stopped. At this the man of God grew angry with him. "You should have struck half a dozen times," he said. and you would have beaten Aram completely. Now you will beat Aram only 3 times. Elisha died and was buried. Bands of Moabites were making incursions into the country every year. Some people happened to be carrying a man out for burial. At the sight of one of these bands, they flung the man into the tomb of Elisha and made off. The man had no sooner touched the bones of Elijah than he came to life and stood up on his feet. Hazael, king of Aram, had oppressed the Israelites throughout the lifetime of Jehoahaz, but Yahweh was kind and took pity on them. Because of the covenant which he had made with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, he relented towards them. He had no wish to destroy them. He did not cast them out of his presence. Hazael, king of Aram, died, and his son Ben-Hadad succeeded him. From Ben-Hadad, son of Hazael, Joash, son of Jehoahaz, recaptured the towns which Hazael had seized from his father Jehoahaz by force of arms. Joash defeated him 3 times and recovered the Israelite towns. Section 7. The 2 kingdoms until the fall of Samaria. The reign of Amaziah in Judah, 796 to 781. In the 2nd year of Joash, son of Jehoahaz, king of Israel, Amaziah, son of Joash, became king of Judah. He was 25 years old when he came to the throne, and he reigned for 29 years in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Jehoaddan of Jerusalem. He did what Yahweh regards as right, though not like his ancestor David. He imitated his father Joash in all respects. The high places, however, were not abolished, and the people still offered sacrifices and incense on the high places. Once the kingdom was firmly under his control, he killed those of his retainers who had murdered the king, his father. But he did not put the murderer's sons to death, in accordance with what is written in the book of Moses, where Yahweh has commanded, Parents may not be put to death for their children, nor children for their parents, but each must be put to death for his own crime. It was he who slaughtered the Edomites in the valley of Salt, 10,000 of them, and captured the rock. He gave it the name Joktheel, which it bears to this present day. Amaziah then sent messengers to Joash, son of Jehoahaz, king of Israel, saying, "Come and make a trial of strength." Jehoash, king of Israel, sent back word to Amaziah, king of Judah. The thistle of Lebanon sent a message to the cedar of Lebanon, saying, "Give my son your daughter in marriage." But a wild animal of the Lebanon ran over the thistle and squashed it. You have conquered Edom, and now aspire to even greater glory. Stay where you belong. Why provoke disaster to your own and to Judah's ruin? But Amaziah would not listen. So Joash, king of Israel, marched to the attack, and at Beth Shemesh, which belongs to Judah, he and Amaziah, king of Judah, made their trial of strength. Judah was defeated by Israel, and everyone fled to his tent. The king of Judah, Amaziah, son of Jehoash, son of Azahiah, was taken prisoner at Beth Shemesh by Joash, king of Israel, who led him off to Jerusalem, where he demolished 400 cubits of the city wall between the Ephraim gate and the corner gate. all the gold and silver and all the vessels to be found in the temple of Yahweh and the palace treasury, and hostages besides, he then took back with him to Samaria. The rest of the history of Jehoash, his entire career, his prowess, how he waged war on Amaziah, king of Judah, is not this recorded in the book of the annals of the kings of Israel? Then Joash fell asleep with his ancestors and was buried in Samaria with the kings of Israel. His son Jeroboam succeeded him. Amaziah, son of Joash, king of Judah, lived for 15 years after the death of Jehoash, son of Jehoaz, king of Israel. The rest of the history of Amaziah, is this not recorded in the book of the annals of the kings of Judah? A plot having been hatched against him in Jerusalem, he fled to Lachish, but he was followed to Lachish, where he was murdered. He was then transported by horse and buried in Jerusalem with his ancestors in the city of David. All the people of Judah then chose Uzziah, who was 16 years old, and made him king in succession to his father Amaziah. It was he who rebuilt Elath, recovering it for Judah, after the king had fallen asleep with his ancestors. The reign of... I'm watching the clock so I don't go over again. The reign of Jeroboam II in Israel, 783 to 743. In the 15th year of Amaziah, son of Joash, king of Judah, Jeroboam, son of Joash, became king of Israel in Samaria. He reigned for 41 years. He did what is displeasing to Yahweh, and did not give up any of the sins into which Jeroboam, son of Nebat, had led Israel. It was he who recovered the territory of Israel from the pass of Hamath to the sea of Arabha, in accordance with the word which Yahweh, God of Israel, had spoken through his servant Jonah, son of Amittai, the prophet of Gath-Heber. For Yahweh had seen how very bitter the affliction of Israel was, with no one, either feathered or free, to come to Israel's help. But Yahweh had resolved not to blot out the name of Israel under heaven. He rescued them by means of Jeroboam, son of Joash. The rest of the history of Jeroboam, his entire career, his prowess, what wars he waged, how he brought Damascus and Hamath back to their allegiance to Judah and Israel. Is this not recorded in the book of the annals of the kings of Israel? Then Jeroboam fell asleep with his ancestors and was buried in Samaria with the kings of Israel. His son Zechariah succeeded him. The reign of Uzziah in Judah, 781 to 740. In the 17th year of Jeroboam, king of Israel, Uzziah, son of Amaziah, became king of Judah. He was 16 years old when he came to the throne, and he reigned for 52 years in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Jecholiah of Jerusalem. He did what Yahweh regards as right, just as his father Amaziah had done. The high places, however, were not abolished, and the people still offered sacrifices and incense on the high places. But Yahweh struck the king, and he was afflicted with a virulent skin disease till his dying day. He lived confined to his room, while Jotham, the king's son, who was master of the palace, governed the country. The rest of the history of Uzziah, his entire career, is this not recorded in the book of the annals of the kings of Judah? Then Uzziah fell asleep with his ancestors and was buried in the city of David. His son Jotham then succeeded him. And I don't know if you guys are following along with this, but it's telling us who was king in Judah at the same time there was a king in Israel. So when you hear in the 17th year of so-and-so, king of Israel, it means that at that point in time in Judah, that king came to power or died. So if that helps you follow this along, because it seems like it's jumping around, but it's really giving a chronological order of who was reigning when so-and-so came to power and who was reigning when so-and-so died. The reign of Zechariah in Israel, 743. In the 38th year of Uzziah, king of Judah, Zechariah, son of Jeroboam, became king of Israel in Samaria for 6 months. He did what is displeasing to Yahweh, and as his fathers had done. He did not give up the sins into which Jeroboam, son of Nebat, had led Israel. Shallum, son of Jabesh, plotted against him, murdered him at Iblim, and succeeded him. The rest of the history of Zechariah is recorded in the book of Annals of the kings of Israel. This was the word which Yahweh had spoken to Jehu. Your sons will sit on the throne of Israel to the 4th generation. And so it turned out. Oops, got carried away again. Uh-oh. Okay, we're going to stop there. We're in chapter 15, and we'll pick up in chapter 15, verse 13. Tomorrow, God willing. And as always, I love you.